The station was called Blackwood Station, and it had a notorious reputation among the locals. It was known for being cursed and was avoided by most passengers, but a few unfortunate souls still had to use it due to its remote location. One moonless night, a lone traveler named Sarah found herself at Blackwood Station. She had missed the last train out and had no choice but to wait until morning for the next one. The station was eerily quiet, with only the distant hooting of an owl breaking the silence. Sarah settled onto a worn bench, trying to make herself comfortable. The flickering overhead lights cast eerie shadows across the platform, creating an unsettling atmosphere. She took out her phone to pass the time, but there was no signal. It seemed as though Blackwood Station was completely cut off from the outside world. As the night wore on, Sarah began to hear strange noises. Faint whispers seemed to echo through the empty platform, and she couldn't tell if they were real or if her mind was playing tricks on her. She felt a growing sense of unease and tried to ignore it, telling herself that it was just her imagination. But then, things took a terrifying turn. The station's old, rusty speakers crackled to life, and a disembodied voice whispered, "Leave this place before it's too late." Sarah's heart raced, and she looked around in terror, but there was no one in sight. She gathered her belongings and made a run for the exit, but as she reached the station's doors, they slammed shut with a deafening crash, trapping her inside. Panic set in as she desperately tried to force the doors open, but they wouldn't budge. The eerie voice continued to whisper, now more urgent and menacing. "You should have left when you had the chance." Shadows began to materialize around her, taking on sinister forms. The temperature dropped, and Sarah's breath turned visible in the cold. Terrified and on the brink of tears, Sarah heard a distant train whistle, signaling the arrival of the next train. She turned to see a ghostly train approaching the station, its windows shrouded in darkness. The conductor, a shadowy figure with hollow eyes, gestured for her to board. With no other options and nowhere else to run, Sarah hesitantly stepped onto the ghostly train. The moment she did, the station and its horrors vanished into thin air. She found herself inside the normal, well-lit carriage of a regular train, surrounded by other passengers. To this day, Sarah swears that Blackwood Station was a place of darkness and malevolence. She never found out the truth behind the cursed station, but she knows one thing for sure: she'll never forget the horrors she experienced that fateful night. And she warns anyone who will listen: if you ever come across Blackwood Station, leave before it's too late, or you may become another victim of its terrifying secrets. It was a stormy night when James found himself stranded at an old, desolate railway station deep in the countryside. The rain was relentless, and the wind howled through the trees, making the situation even more ominous. The station was called Willowbrook Station, and it had a sinister reputation in the nearby town. James had been traveling to visit his grandparents, but as he waited for the late-night train, he couldn't shake off a sense of unease. The station was empty, and the only light came from a flickering overhead bulb. Thunder rumbled in the distance, creating an eerie backdrop for his anxiety. As he sat on a wooden bench, he noticed a pale, disheveled man in ragged clothes sitting at the far end of the platform. The man seemed lost in thought, staring blankly into the darkness. James decided to approach him, thinking he might need help. "Hey there," James called out. The man slowly turned his head, revealing vacant eyes that sent shivers down James's spine. The stranger's voice was a low, raspy whisper as he muttered, "Beware the train." Confused and alarmed, James asked, "What do you mean, beware the train?" Before he could get an answer, the ground trembled, and a distant whistle pierced the night air. The train was approaching Willowbrook Station, but as it neared, James noticed something was horribly wrong. The train was old and decrepit, its windows broken, and its metal body rusted. The doors creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. James hesitated but felt an inexplicable urge to board. He climbed on, and the moment he stepped inside, the train's doors slammed shut behind him. He was surrounded by darkness, and the train began to move, its wheels screeching on the tracks. As James's eyes adjusted to the dim light, he realized he wasn't alone. Ghostly figures occupied the seats, all with hollow eyes and expressionless faces. They stared at him with a haunting intensity that chilled him to the bone. The train seemed to be hurtling through a never-ending tunnel, the walls closing in around James. Panic set in as he desperately tried to escape, but the ghostly passengers blocked his way. The train's interior grew colder and colder, and James could see his breath in the frigid air. Suddenly, the ghostly passengers began to chant in unison, their voices echoing through the train. "You should have heeded the warning. Now, you are one of us." James screamed as the cold darkness consumed him, and the train continued its eerie journey into the unknown. Back at Willowbrook Station, the storm eventually subsided, and the morning light revealed an empty platform. James was never seen again, and the legend of Willowbrook Station persisted, a place where lost souls were trapped for eternity, warning others to beware the train. The small town of Crestfall was known for its picturesque surroundings, but it held a dark secret, a cursed railway station called Whispering Pines. Local legends spoke of the station being haunted by the ghosts of passengers who had met tragic fates there. One gloomy evening, Sarah, a curious young woman with a fascination for the supernatural, decided to spend the night at Whispering Pines. Armed with her camera and a recording device, she arrived at the abandoned station, its wooden benches weathered and broken, and the platform overgrown with weeds. As night fell, Sarah set up her equipment and began her investigation. She had heard whispers of disembodied voices and ghostly apparitions, and she was determined to capture evidence of the paranormal. As the hours passed, the station became colder and more foreboding. Sarah's camera captured strange orbs of light, and her recording device picked up faint, spectral whispers that sent shivers down her spine. The atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive, and she began to feel a presence closing in on her. In the distance, the sound of a train approaching sent a jolt of fear through her. It was a ghost train, a spectral locomotive with no passengers or crew. The train pulled into the station with an otherworldly screech, and Sarah could barely make out the faint outlines of ghostly figures in the windows. The station lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the platform. Sarah, determined to document the supernatural event, approached the ghostly train and stepped onto its rusted, spectral carriage. Inside, the atmosphere was even colder, and the ghostly passengers stared at her with hollow eyes. The train began to move, slowly at first, and then gaining speed as it hurtled through a dark, endless tunnel. Sarah felt trapped, her heart pounding as she realized the dire truth. She had become a passenger on the ghost train, destined to join the spectral souls that haunted Whispering Pines. Desperation set in as she tried to escape, but the ghostly passengers blocked her every move. The train continued its relentless journey into the unknown, the darkness swallowing Sarah whole. Back in Crestfall, the townsfolk knew never to venture near Whispering Pines after nightfall. They whispered tales of the cursed station and the young woman who had disappeared into the ghost train's eternal darkness. To this day, the station remains abandoned, a place where the living dare not tread, and the souls of the departed continue their endless, haunting journey on the spectral rails. High in the mountains, hidden away from civilization, lay a remote railway station known as Spectral Summit. Few people ventured there, and even fewer spoke of it. The station had a grim reputation, and those who knew of its existence whispered of ghostly apparitions and eerie occurrences. One fateful night, a daring journalist named Alex decided to investigate the mysteries of Spectral Summit. Armed with a notebook, a flashlight, and a camera, he arrived at the station just as the sun began to set. The air grew colder, and an unnatural stillness enveloped the station. As Alex explored the abandoned platform, he noticed an old train sitting on the tracks, covered in dust and cobwebs. It appeared as though it hadn't moved in decades, yet the strangest part was that it was a train he had never seen or heard of before, a relic of a bygone era. Curiosity getting the best of him, Alex decided to document the train's interior. He cautiously stepped on board, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The interior was pristine, as if frozen in time, and it exuded an unsettling sense of nostalgia. As he ventured further into the train, Alex came across an empty compartment that felt strangely inviting. The seats were plush, and the soft glow of an antique lamp bathed the room in an eerie, golden light. Overcome by a sense of dread, Alex took a seat and began to hear faint whispers in the air. The whispers grew louder, the voices of countless souls speaking in hushed tones, their words unintelligible but laden with sorrow. Panic set in as Alex realized he was not alone in the compartment. Ghostly figures materialized around him, their eyes hollow and mournful. The train suddenly jerked to life, its wheels screeching as it began to move. The ghostly passengers turned their gaze toward Alex, and their whispers became a haunting cacophony. The train was now hurtling through a seemingly endless tunnel, the walls closing in around him. Desperate to escape, Alex tried to leave the compartment, but the ghostly figures blocked his way. They chanted in unison, their voices echoing through the train, "Join us in eternal sorrow." As the train continued its relentless journey, Alex felt himself becoming one with the spectral passengers. His body grew cold, and he became a part of the ghostly procession that haunted Spectral Summit. The next morning, the station remained abandoned, and no trace of Alex could be found. The legend of Spectral Summit endured, a place where the living were lured into a timeless nightmare, and where the souls of the departed continued their never-ending journey into darkness. In the heart of a remote, fog-shrouded forest stood an ancient railway station known as Shadowbrook Station. The station had long been abandoned, its tracks overgrown with weeds, and its buildings crumbling from years of neglect. Locals spoke of it in hushed tones, warning others to stay away after dark. One moonless night, a group of adventurous friends decided to test the legends surrounding Shadowbrook Station. Armed with flashlights and a sense of excitement, they arrived at the station just as the clock struck midnight. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves. As the group explored the decaying platform, they noticed an old timetable that indicated a train was scheduled to pass through the station that very night, a train that shouldn't exist on any schedule. Curiosity piqued, they decided to wait and see if it would appear. The minutes ticked by, and as the group's patience waned, they suddenly heard the distant sound of a train approaching. To their astonishment, a ghostly locomotive emerged from the thick fog, its headlight casting an eerie glow. The train was ancient, its metal body rusted and its windows shrouded in darkness. The friends hesitated but couldn't resist the temptation to investigate further. They boarded the train and were greeted by a cold, damp interior. The seats were worn and tattered, and a chilling breeze passed through the carriage. It seemed abandoned, except for one shadowy figure seated in the back. As the friends moved deeper into the train, they felt an overwhelming sense of unease. The figure in the back remained motionless, its face obscured. The group exchanged nervous glances but pressed on, trying to shake off their growing fear. Suddenly, the doors slammed shut with a deafening crash, trapping them inside. Panic set in as the train lurched forward, picking up speed. The figure in the back slowly turned to reveal hollow, malevolent eyes, and it began to whisper in a sinister tone, "This is your final journey." The friends desperately tried to escape, but the ghostly figure and the other passengers blocked their way. The train hurtled through the forest, its interior growing colder and darker with each passing moment. The group realized they had become unwilling passengers on a nightmarish voyage. As the train entered a tunnel, the darkness closed in around them, and their screams echoed through the suffocating blackness. The next morning, Shadowbrook Station stood abandoned and desolate once more. The friends were never seen again, and the legend of the cursed railway station persisted, a place where the living were drawn into a nightmarish realm, and the souls of the departed continued their eternal journey into the shadows.